Glad to have you here. Give us a few minutes. We're getting everybody signing in. So we'll wait about a minute or two here as we get the last few in to get kicked off here. But welcome to everybody.
Afternoon.
Hi, can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Hi.
Now, Jake, how long have you been running these webinars?
For this particular kind, this would be a new one. I'll kick it off in here. We've done a few. I think we've had a few over the summer, and the company's been doing them for a couple of years now.
Very nice.
So yes.
Glad to be here.
Great. All right, everybody, we'll get started. As we were saying to Ryan, we got Ryan Alcorn here. This is Jake Dooley with here at Local Vest. This is run a little bit differently. So those of you who've done a Local Vest webinar before, normally they are webinars, which there is a difference in Zoom. So a webinar, you have the panelists, and then the rest of you are muted out. Well, we don't have that today. We did this as a meeting, and the reason we did that is there is the capability for you to come off mute. You can actually talk to Ryan. We can ask some questions. This is a much more intimate group. I think we had a couple dozen who signed up for this. So it's a little different. So if you are in here, make sure that you stay muted. If you don't, we will mute you. Okay. But if you do have a question, the two ways are, we'll talk here for a little bit about what we're going, but if there's something where you can do the raise your hand feature, or there'll be some time at the end, you can also put it in the chat. Laura's here with us to do it, but just be mindful of that if you're chatting to go through. Like I said, normally what we've been doing at Local Vest is we promote different deals that are out there, and we continue to do that. But this is an opportunity that came up that we wanted to chat with you all, which is some things to learn about different things on the issuer side. If you have a company and you're trying to support some things, and one of those things that comes up, and I got to be honest, I knew very little about, Ryan, is this idea of grants, or as they say, non-dilutive capital. So let's go through. So when we use the term grants, like other terms, when you hear that one in non-dilutive capital, how does that work, and how do you think of it as it comes to your company with Grant Exec?
Great question, and happy to be here, Jake. Thank you to Local Vest for bringing me on. I'm excited to chat about grants. So when we define grants, we have to use a very expansive definition because there's so many kinds of grants, and there are a lot of different understandings of what it means. So as we define it, it's a financial donation from an institution to further a social or an economic purpose. So you may have heard of a grant from a community foundation to a nonprofit, or maybe you've heard of a research grant from the NIH to a university or a research institute. What we've been able to determine is that there are funding opportunities that are not just for nonprofits and research institutions, but there are opportunities for small businesses and some for larger businesses, small businesses as defined by the SBA under a certain amount of revenue or employees. But when we talk about grants, we're really talking about non-dilutive capital coming from institutions like the government, corporations, and foundations. So really, a grant is a relatively flexible financial mechanism that is incredibly attractive for organizations looking to raise capital. This isn't the classic way that organizations will typically, or startups like our own, will raise capital, but it's an incredibly powerful opportunity because, one, you don't lose any ownership when you receive the award. Two, you don't have to pay it back. It's not a loan. There may be some strings attached, I will say. So for example, Grant Exec was fortunate enough to recently receive an award from the the Commonwealth Commercialization Fund here in Virginia. And that was $75,000 that'll go towards our software development. And we were very fortunate to get that. The only strings that were attached were we are keeping the business headquartered in the Commonwealth of Virginia for 3 years. So grants are very attractive. I'd love to talk more about where they come from, how to secure them, and why veteran-owned businesses are particularly well-positioned to secure these opportunities.
Okay, so we talked location to go through and where it comes. Are they always called grants, or they have other unique names that go with them, like when you're looking at them?
Yeah, so for our purposes, grant, you're going to find the name grant on 99% of these opportunities. So what you may be seeing other opportunities that are looking for investment, which this is not, right, because this is non-dilutive. This is also not a loan, not to be confused, but it's also, you also occasionally will have something where you're getting a subsidy for an individual. So think of, you might have heard of course, Pell Grants. These are not grants in the traditional sense that we're talking about. We're talking about one institution providing another institution with a financial donation. So a Pell Grant is really a scholarship. So you'll sometimes hear these things interchangeably, but when you're grant seeking, what you're looking for are opportunities for businesses from either the government, corporations, or from foundations. And I'd be happy to get into those details as well.
But and before we go, there's what can you use the money for? I mean, how restricted is it? Like, does it have to be a specific project? Is it just goes into the operating fund? Like, what do some of those things look like?
Great question. And this is entirely case by case. So common types of grants will be project grants when an organization, so let's say a community foundation is looking for an organization to run a program. So for example, we have a customer of ours runs, it's called Her Sports. They do sports and community building for girls. We were able to connect them with an opportunity in the city of Charlottesville that were looking for an organization to put on events for a targeted community. Those were girls with families making under a certain amount of money. And so we're able to connect an organization with an opportunity that is based on a specific project. So project grants will go, that money that you get will go directly to a specific program or project. Other types, capital grants, we spoke about this recently. These are typically to build, maintain, or renovate something. So a local government, maybe a state government, will say, all right, we've got this amount of money. We're looking to refurbish a building or reinvigorate an area of town. Here's some funding. We're looking for the best organization that can lead either that specific building, rebuilding, renovation, or introducing economic stimulus to an area. That's the second kind. Another type are research grants, like we talked about a little bit earlier. So this is if in the case of small businesses, that's when the government is looking or willing to fund higher risk research and development opportunities. So you may be familiar with SBIR, STTR. You'll probably hear those terms from NSF, DOE, NIH, different organizations like that. Now, these are grants. They're non-dilutive. They're large amounts of capital that act as a seed fund for organizations that are looking to raise money to develop a product. And the reason that these are particularly effective is because SBIR and STTR opportunities support organizations that otherwise may not be able to access funding because their startup might be too risky or the technology isn't proven yet. So project grants, capital grants, and research grants are three, I would say, dedicated grant types where funding will go directly to a specific endeavor. Now, you're also going to have, for small business grants, the opportunities will go directly to really whatever you want that are business expenses. So you'll find corporations, for example, for really any large corporation with a brand name it will typically have some kind of charitable foundation. And what they're looking to do is fund organizations that either align with their mission, support their public relations and their advertising, or dedicate support to a specific community of business owners. So whether that's women, minorities, or even veteran groups. So the funding that's typically coming from those organizations is not particularly restrictive. It's usually smaller amounts. You're going to be looking at these opportunities are typically between 5 to 10 to maybe $75,000 for these unrestricted funds. But there are opportunities typically from corporate foundations that are unrestricted and will go to just about anything that you need to fund for your business. So it's a matter of aligning those missions, and it's pretty compelling.
And I guess that's what makes it interesting here. We're talking is the fact that like all of us in here are veterans. It's like that starts to become an affinity group that could just have unrestricted dollars to it as long as you apply the right way.
Correct.
Or like yours, they said like, someone tries to talk about, well, what am I going to have to report out the back end? You're saying like the one that you have is Virginia. And so it's like, well, some basic things. I'm like, well, I told them I was going to keep the company in Virginia and try to grow my number of employees in Virginia. You were planning to do it anyway. So you'll have to report it, but that's not like you're redefining your business as an example.
Exactly. There's really no sacrifice on our end, which is very fortunate. And frankly, for the VIPC, for this opportunity in particular, the reporting requirements are kind. They're pretty liberal. So, for example, we have to provide a rundown of our spending by at the 6-month and 12-month mark, and then we provide an annual report every year until presumably 2029. But those reports are just a few paragraphs. It's if you're keeping track of your books the way you should, really won't be an issue. And it's just frankly good financial practice will provide you the reporting requirements that you need that will inform those reports. Now, the specifics of the actual reporting requirements are going to vary between agencies, foundations, corporations, of course, but you'll be able to get all of that information when you're in the application process ahead of time.
Okay. All right, so let's figure out how the heck to do this. All right. All right, so let's make ourselves a fictitious, I don't know, I won't even give it a name, but we're a for-profit company owned by a veteran, right? So yeah. The process of trying to go do this. So I guess I have to start and essentially create a budget, like what I want to go after, and start to find, like, if I go today without grants, I have to go through, how do I find these things? To me, that seems hard. Great question.
And it is a little bit overwhelming. The first place you're going to start is determine what you're looking to fund. So are you, if you're simply looking to fund your business, and heck, we all are, I completely understand, then determine what a reasonable amount is for whatever your desired runway might be. So say this organization is looking for $50,000 in unrestricted grant funding. So we know that we need to raise $50,000, and we can justify that by saying this money will fund, maybe our marketing or our product development or something like that, but the natural operations and growth of a business. So we determine exactly what we're looking to fund. So that's step one. Can't do anything else unless you know what you're looking for, looking to get funding for, right? Next is your search. This is when you identify relevant opportunities, and this is why I built Grant Exec, is because this process is so incredibly difficult. But there are a lot of places you can start. So if you're a solo entrepreneur, not terribly well connected yet, start with Google. So begin by looking up grant opportunities for veteran-owned businesses or businesses in small businesses in your area. You can begin by doing an initial parsing through those opportunities. Talk with local organizations. Find out which community foundation that your business may be within or a part of. See what opportunities they have. For example, here in Northern Virginia, we have the Community Foundation for Northern Virginia. They do an excellent job of putting out opportunities on a regular basis. So if wherever you are, find out where your nearest community foundation is, check in with them. From there, you can also check government websites. If you're looking to access those R&D funds we were talking about, maybe considering an SBIR opportunity if you have a product that you're looking to develop and eventually commercialize. All of these can be found on the internet for the most part, although they're not particularly well indexed on Google, and so it makes it difficult to find specific opportunities, but they are out there. Another thing you can do, if you have a board or an informal team of advisors, talk to those folks, find out which, you'd be surprised which companies that you may be connected to that have a charitable wing or a fund that's dedicated to giving to small businesses or nonprofits. So check in with your network there. Once you've identified particular opportunities, you got to ensure that you're eligible. You got to make sure that this opportunity, it may say small business, small business grant. Great, that's us. We're a small business, but we need to make sure that we meet all of the eligibility criteria. So sometimes that'll mean, are you in the right state? Something as simple as geographic eligibility. Another thing might be, can you meet a matching requirement? This is where folks can get tripped up. So what is a matching requirement? A matching requirement is when an organization says, we will give you, let's say that $50,000, but we need you to match up to 50% of that. So that means that you have to come up with or identify $25,000 essentially that will go into that grant. So sometimes organizations will want to know that you are solvent or that you've got other interest from other organizations, maybe your community members or your customers, that will make them more comfortable giving that funding. So watch out for a cost share or a matching requirement when you're looking through these opportunities. If you've determined that you're eligible, you'll then want to create an application checklist. So, all right, you've determined you're ready to apply. Now it's time to do the thing, right? So look into the application. Typically, there'll be either a portal online or really a PDF printout that you can use to review all of the specifics of this opportunity. This is going to range, this is really where the most variation in the grant seeking world is, because you're going to have some organizations that are only going to ask, heck, maybe 5 or 10 questions, and it's the barrier to applying is quite low. But that also means that likely maybe thousands of organizations are also going to apply. When organizations have a more comprehensive application, although it is tedious and can be frustrating to put together, that is a way that these funders can sift out less competitive applications. So if you're not a serious organization and you're just thinking about maybe throwing your hat in the ring, maybe a 15-page application might turn you off, right? And so while these are pretty comprehensive, these more serious opportunities of larger dollar amounts, they're very much worth your time. So when I say create an application checklist, what do I mean? You are going to need to identify each particular item in the application that you're going to need to fill out. So whether that's a narrative, so writing it'll essentially be like a few paragraphs, back to school, a few paragraphs about what exactly your organization does. It's going to be beyond the mission statement, right? So explaining what you're doing, why it's impactful in whatever realm, whatever sector you're in, why it's building something or making a difference or creating an economic impact or best serving your customers, right? So that's your narrative. You're going to need to also create a budget. You're also going to, and your budget is going to tell you exactly what you're going to be spending the money on. And if you have a match, you are going to identify where the funds for that match is coming from. I'll give you an example though. The match can be pretty daunting, but in a lot of instances, you are able to write off a lot of those matches through in-kind contributions. So for example, for Grant Exec, I was able to write off the in-kind contributions of ours from my informal advisors who had been supporting me through these early stages. So while I wasn't paying them, they were giving me their hours and their time was quite valuable. So you're able to provide in-kind contributions when justifying your match in a lot of circumstances. Check with your specific eligibility criteria and the terms and conditions of the opportunity, but that is something you can sometimes do. In addition to a budget, you're going to be looking at other relevant documentation. If you need to provide some kind of certification of whatever status the organization is asking for, those items will be in there as well. It's a case-by-case thing, but the best thing you can do is get organized, identify which items of the application are going to take the longest, and then you can knock them out. It's really not, it's not all that different from applying to colleges in some ways, or really any older application process. It's going to take a while, but if it's done right, it's worthwhile. So,
Gotcha.
oh, go ahead. Sorry.
You're gonna say it feels like applying for college before you can go through, because if you weren't prepared, then you can get behind quickly. But then you start seeing that they start asking for a lot of the same things, but it's that initial hurdle of all those things, and they start asking them in their unique ways to try to make sure that they're differentiated, and you
Right.
can't just hit send in 20 minutes and apply.
Right. Well, and Jake, you bring up a great point, because the first application is typically the hardest, because you are creating a lot of content about your organization that is transferable in most ways to other applications. So it may take you, maybe it'll take you 20 hours to pull together your application for the first time. But once you have that, you are going to have transferable content about your organization that you can then massage into other applications. So you'll be able to save a great amount of time generating content between applications. So once you have your first one done, keep that information with you, and so you can apply it to future applications as well. So you've got that checklist, you want to create a production schedule. This is for the more intense, the more comprehensive opportunities. So if you've got let's say a Department of Energy grant that's due in mid-March, work backwards from that deadline. Okay, how long will each item take? And if we can map that out in a Gantt table, or however you like to map out your projects, work backwards from that date. Give yourself a little bit of padding room from that due date, at least a week, maybe two, and then build out the rest of the steps backwards from that date. So if you've got 3 months, begin. And you can have deadlines for each part of the opportunity, and you can build it out from there. Highly recommend a grant writer to support those efforts, but we'll talk about that later on.
Okay, but question in there, like, to be
Please.
really realistic about it. Like if I'm looking at one, so it's the 10th today, so it's probably a little crazy if you've never done one of these before to go, oh, the deadline's January 31st. That's, unless you're going to clear the deck and focus on, that's probably really tight to apply, is what you're saying?
I would say generally yes, particularly for government applications. So
Okay.
From local, state, and federal grant applications, you're probably going to need a longer, more time to complete those applications. There are, like I said, those other opportunities that are smaller or are more accessible. Heck, if it only takes you a couple of hours, submit that application. And sometimes this is a major challenge in grant seeking. Opportunities are only open for a couple of weeks at a time. So sometimes you'll have a corporation or a foundation saying, all right, we're going to give out $5,000, $10,000. Deadline is end of January. And so that is a little bit of it can be a little bit of a marketing stunt, right? There's driving a lot of traffic to their website. Maybe they're a B2B company, but there are sometimes windows that are quite small. And so acting on those smaller opportunities in a timely fashion can be important. So that's all to say, case by case, recognize the complexity of the application of the opportunity. And you can determine that information very quickly once you're on the page. Once you've identified the opportunity, you'll be able to determine quite relatively quickly how much of a lift that opportunity will be to apply for.
Gotcha. And then I know you talked about like diversified app to go through, but I guess I want to ask this before I forget it, but the timing, like from application to announcing the grant and money showing your account, you mentioned it can be long. So like this is a long game.
Particularly with the federal government. When you apply for a federal grant, so for example, we have a client, it's a solar startup that applied for a Department of Energy grant that was sent off at the end of October, and we're expecting to hear back on the decision at the end of this month. So you're looking at three or 4 months for those kind of opportunities. It's really a matter of bureaucracy, reviewing these opportunities, things like that. But some organizations, particularly in the private sector, will be more forthright with when you can expect to hear back. The nice thing is we know, at least from the federal government, that it's going to be, the decision will be January 31st. We can plan for that. But you are right that from the application submission deadline to the award announcement to the actual disbursement of the funds can sometimes take between, up to, I would say, between the deadline and the actual disbursement of the funds, sometimes 6 months. So there is a lag time. It's not going to be the lag that you would see in a funding round, which is nice, or that lead time where better than I do. The process of going through a funding round is what, a year, 18 months, sometimes more. And so for the grant cycle, you can expect to receive the award I would say, federal grants much longer, say 6 months. Smaller opportunities, if they're on top of their stuff, you'd have a much faster turnaround time. But you are right. This is not something where you are chosen and the money's in your pocket the next day. It will take some time. So this is grant seeking should be a longer term strategy where you're identifying opportunities that will fund projects in the future that you are looking to use to grow your business. I think for small businesses, grants are a wonderful opportunity to accelerate your growth and or fund research and development that may not be as attractive to traditional investors. These organizations, particularly the federal government, is very open to funding new innovative technologies that have major economic and social potential, but maybe a higher risk than what your typical VCs are willing to tolerate.
Gotcha. Okay, so this is like my sister-in-law does this. I'm used to hearing this, like nonprofits and have like a grant writer on staff and all that. This is a painful process. And you would come in and talk to us about and I go through about how you create a grant exec, because it's really daunting if you're like all by yourself. So what can you do to help out a company go through these stages?
Well, thank you for asking. I appreciate that. So Grant Exec was built because of the incredibly painful process I'll say tedious process that I went through working at a woman-owned small business, a contractor in Charlottesville, also now based in DC, excitingly. My job was to go through an Excel sheet of links to check every day to see if there was a new grant posted on a particular website that my bosses had identified might be relevant to our organization. And so I'm working just clicking through links every day. This was a subset of my job, but it was incredibly tedious. And I thought there's got to be a better way to collect these opportunities and put them into a place that we can identify relevant opportunities for specific organizations. I then went on to work at K&L Gates here in DC, and they were doing the same kind of work manually for their clients. And so, heck, maybe there's an opportunity here. Maybe there's a gap in the market. And so what Grant Exec does, we're a startup founded in 2021. And we've just gone through our seed round. So we've launched our first product. What we do is we collect grants from the universe of opportunities. So we reach out. We're scraping from about 10,000 independent sources. So that's all federal grants, all 27 federal grant making agencies, about 9,000 private and corporate foundations, and about 1,000 state and local governments. So we grab this wide universe of data, pull it all into our own database, and then what we do is we take customer profiles. So say you're interested in our services, you go online and you fill out our order form, our profile setup, or our order form. Within there is information about your organization and your grant seeking goals. we grab that information, run it through our AI matching model, which is a fancy way of saying we're able to filter this data and assign scores based on the relevance of the match. From there, we run through an output. That output is verified and vetted by our grant writers. We have a team of 12 grant writers right now and it's growing every day, but who are looking through each opportunity, ensuring that the information is accurate, going to the source, so going to the website to check that this opportunity is still active since we last checked it, that the information is complete, and that the organization purchasing our report is eligible for the opportunity. So we grab all that information, we do that entire vetting process, and then we deliver you the relevant opportunities that we recommend you pursue with all the information you need to make it happen. So essentially, we're moving 2 steps forward. So there are other organizations that have paid database subscriptions where if you want to get access to that universe of opportunities, they say that they provide that for you. But you still have to vet each opportunity individually. So you're not getting the information, the vetted information that you really need to make an informed decision about grant seeking. From there, so you've got your opportunities in hand. We've said, all right, we recommend opportunity A, B, C, and D. Here's why. And if any of the opportunities are not actually a fit, if the funder determines that you're not eligible, we will go and find another opportunity at no extra cost. So you're guaranteed quality leads. Once you get your report, you're offered to sit down with us, review the recommendations, figure out what your best strategy is, which you should pursue first based on our recommendations. And then if you're looking for a grant writer, if you want someone to manage that application, we have comprehensive grant writing services. So we've got a team of 12 who have varying levels of expertise in different areas. So we've got grant writers who specialize in working with the Department of Energy or Health and Human Services or smaller community foundations, arts organizations, things like that. And so we're able to provide essentially an outsourced grant shop. So anytime you're looking for grants, you let us know. We find those new opportunities based on what you're looking for and based on your eligibility on your time. You never pay a subscription, so you're not paying when you're not looking for grants, and we help you secure those opportunities. In addition to that, we've also built out a federal grant monitoring service where if you're an organization that's providing government relations services or lobbying services, things like that, or you're a chamber of commerce or really any organization that's looking to provide insights to organizations interested in the federal government. We track every grant that comes out of the federal government. We're the first company to do it, and we publish that information in a daily newsletter and on our website as well. So we are at our core a data company that's passionate about connecting organizations with funding in a new way, because we think that grants are an incredibly powerful financial mechanism that are under leveraged because of the inefficient infrastructure that is essentially not allowing us to bridge the gap between folks that have resources and are looking to disperse that money for good things, for economic prosperity, for social harmony, and the folks that know how to do it, that have the drive to do it and the time and the energy, but don't have the capital. And so we're looking to bridge that gap. And that's Grant Exec in a nutshell.
All right, we'll go through. See, John's asking the question about the person marked local vest. I think it's because it comes from our events page. So that's what's going on there. But you had the question here, John, is a setup charge, or essentially how does that work if you go and fill that out, your structure?
And is it saying that I'm not named?
No, it's probably I'm events at
No.
local vest, so it's Jake.
Oh, gotcha.
Jake Dooley. I think that's who you're seeing in there.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. Well, to your question, all right. So do you have an initial setup charge, or do you charge as a percentage of the one grant? Great question. So what we're offering are leads. So we charge based on the verified lead that you get. So what we can't do, and the Grant Professionals Association forbids, is taking a commission based on receipt of the award. There are some ethical issues there, but what we provide are standard services based on your budget and the hours that our grant writers are providing. So essentially, looks like we got the meeting chat worked out
Yeah,
great.
we got it all set. Yeah.
Cool. So when you order a scouting report, that's our lead generation service. So you order a scouting report, you determine how many grants you want to see. You can choose between 3 and 10 grants. Yeah, of course. And within that, you can determine how much you want to see per grant. So say my funding goal is $150,000. So I say I want to find 3 grants worth $50,000 each. So that goes into the price. And then, do I want to see funder profile? So in addition to the information about the opportunity itself, are you interested in learning about the funder as well? So what we do when you choose that option is we go into the IRS database of 990 filings. So if they're a private foundation, of course, they have to report who they've given to in the past, what their assets are, their giving amounts. And so we're able to run some calculations through that data to determine valuable information, not just about the opportunity, but who's giving the opportunity, who's behind that, contact information for the decision makers there so that you can interface with them and better understand their needs and whether it's a good fit. Also, we'll tell you who they've given to in the past so you can compare to see if you're a peer organization and see if it fits within your goals. So we grab all that information and then we price based on those factors. So the number of grants that you're looking to see, the award amount per grant, and whether or not you want to see funder profiles. Our guarantee is important here because we recognize that we're not able to guarantee that you're going to win, right? These are competitive grants. There are a lot of factors outside of our control that'll determine whether or not you will get funded, but we are able to guarantee that you will be getting opportunities that you are eligible for. And if not, we'll do the work and find a new opportunity that you are at no extra charge. Question from Tony or Jake, how do you want to do this? Do you want me to read the questions?
Yeah, I can look at them to go through, but then the other part too is if someone goes like, so that was your scouting report. Then you're saying like, if someone goes, will you help me do the grants? Like you can have people help fill out the application, but then you do have to go through the work of actually telling them what needs to go in there. Right? Like you have to vet what your thesis statement and create the budget in that, but at least framing part, right?
Right. So great question. Yeah. So the value of a grant writer, that's a great question. So a grant writer is able to identify exactly what the funder is offering or is looking for, massage the information about your organization into a way that's going to make you the most compelling candidate. In addition to the more straightforward administrative burden that you're looking to put off, whether that's just getting your documents in order, doing your basic copywriting and editing, a grant writer is basically going to be your project manager for the application. And what we offer is a very flexible range of services within that. So if you're looking for someone who just wants if you just want someone to review your work, then we are able to say, all right, maybe that'll be 2 billable hours. We'll give you a full review, add our annotations and our notes, and provide you the recommendations of edits to make. If you're looking for something more comprehensive, we also will budget out exactly what that'll take, what each individual step will be, and that will justify the cost of each piece. So we're able to provide as much or as little support as you need to prepare an application. And so the way that we're able to do that is we're just working around your budget, essentially.
Okay, so you were maybe you should read these ones off again here because people ask them the questions about years of eligible, like essentially years you've been in business, or some of these different requirements. Like how do we fight through these criteria?
Yeah. Good question. So these are going to be case by case. I'll give you an example. While there are a number of opportunities that require you to be in business for a certain number of years, that's definitely true. There also a lot of opportunities for new businesses, so young businesses. So if your business hasn't been around for a certain number of years, or your revenue is under a certain amount, or your operating expenses are under a certain amount, there are targeted grants for these smaller organizations as well. So that is definitely a valid concern, but there are lots of opportunities outside of that. And would love, if you're looking for specific opportunities for your organization, we can find those for you. But also, just if you just Google small business grants for my business, you'll begin to find leads for these general opportunities for small solo entrepreneurs or small businesses, organizations with under a certain amount of funding, things like that. So there is a wide universe of opportunities with different criteria.
Interesting. Anybody? Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, go ahead. Oh, I was just
Well, I
gonna
was just gonna say, does anybody have any questions to go through? Because I'm getting towards the end of the list of my questions to go through, or things I was going to talk about. But if anybody wants to pop off of mute or type it in the chat, if there's something that we haven't talked about and you wanted to ask on this topic of grants.
And I can
I got a
also.
question.
Oh yeah,
Go
please
ahead,
go ahead.
Tony.
Hey, since these are competitive grants, I work in the education system, or we sell a lot to the education system. They're competitive, and I was looking at the funder profiles where you're providing the email address, the contact, and all that stuff. A lot of the competitive grants on the education side, they don't want you talking to. So what's the value of that for a business?
So if the contact information isn't of interest to you, that's totally understandable. What we find valuable about the funder profiles is, in addition to the contact information that you're right, in this instance may not be appropriate, is the giving history. So if you're interested in finding out which organizations had received grants in the past, if you're already able to find that information on your own, then you don't want to opt into a funder profile. It might not be necessary. But if you want to connect with organizations that were previously successful, this is a great way to identify those organizations. So, for example, for the grant that we just won, a peer organization that had won last year sat down with me, and I was able to pick their brain about what influenced their decision to apply, what made their application successful, things like that. So we found that to be compelling. But you are right that some organizations will be less open to direct interaction during that application period. Yeah, good question.
Are there better discounts on grant exec?
And there is, yes, there certainly is. So if you use local 10, all caps, that'll give you a discount. And I appreciate you reminding us of that.
Yeah, actually, as we get to the end to go through, we'll send out the recording of this too if you want to see. And I think if you can go on the grant exec site, you can actually see some of the formats too. Laura's putting that in there. But we'll give that all to you so you can go and check that out later if you wanted to. You can give Brian a call and talk through anything that we haven't done. If there's something specific for your company that you don't want to talk about out in public, to go through. Because I think the thing for me too is understanding that there are, I guess I'm trying to wrap my head around the idea that there are grants for-profit companies, but that it's like, look, we just want you to be in our community, or that you're trying to grow employment, or just the fact that you're a veteran. And a lot of us, we fit all those criteria no matter what. We got to be located somewhere. We have that affinity group, and we're trying to grow. And they're just, some of these are out there, but just trying to find these darn things. And that's what interests, we brought in Ryan to go through and started talking to us. I'm like, man, we should share this out, because I don't want to do it. Right. And a lot of you the same way. And then there's, or the pain of just, it's daunting trying to fill the darn applications out. And so the more opportunities we can do and talk about it, but yeah, I don't know if anybody else has signed up and tried to do this, but if, Ryan is there, or we can talk about it other times about how you go about doing this, because it's a really neat opportunity if we can get it.
Ryan or Jake, can I share some experiences with you? This is John Kraft.
Please.
Sure.
So I'm the founder and chief executive officer of a for-profit company. But when I was a young man, when I was a young transitioning veteran, I got a technology job at a nonprofit in California. And one of my tasks was to find 110 PCs with operating systems, 2 monitors each, build a website, and deploy that throughout the organization. The organization was the California Police Activities League. So it was a nonprofit. And an older person at a conference or somewhere bumped into me and said, write some grants. So as a young man, about 24, 25, 26 years old, maybe 10 or 20 years older than Ryan is right now. That's a good-natured joke. I researched the grants and I wrote them. And I received a grant for the price of half the PCs, all the operating systems. Something I didn't think of at the time was all of these police officers that would be getting these computers. And this was over 20 years ago, right? IDG Books, I found a grant that let me get Windows for Dummies, Excel for Dummies, all that jazz, you know, back in that day that people might need. And I successfully did this as a relatively young man. Now, I worked for a nonprofit, a 501c3 nonprofit. So I think that was some low-hanging fruit, and that's why I was so successful. As they said earlier, many different grants are going to have many different requirements, right? So I'm a for-profit company. I may want to buy a building in North Bend. That building may not be where I want it to be, but Ryan may find me a grant that says, if I'm a for-profit and I'm going to revitalize a building in this neighborhood, somebody out there may care about that, and somebody out there may have a grant for it. So this may be new to a lot of people. My bookkeeper's on this call and she's hitting me up like, wow, this is pretty cool. I forgot about it. I did this 30 years ago. And I think Ryan nailed it. There are many different grants. They're going to have many different requirements. You got to start the journey. That's all I wanted to share. I think this is a good meeting. And Ryan, for a young man, I think you represent yourself excellently. I will say that.
Thank you, John. I really appreciate that.
It's good. I can't beat that.
That's it right there.
And so like I said, we'll send the recording of this if you want to go back to it, and the link so you can reach out to Ryan if you want to talk. I think it's great. And if you all have success in doing it, just remember it does take a lot of effort to go through and help, but there's a lot of prep that we have to do, and it takes a long time. So it may take a while in here, but we're all in this for the long haul. So if you've got that and ready to apply, I'd be very interested to hear how it goes for everybody. We're talking about doing it ourselves and seeing where we can get some grant funding as well. So if we're good there, thanks everybody for joining. And what I end it with here, I think there's going to be a survey question that pops up. And what it is we're looking for more opportunities to this for you, for those of you who are out raising money as an issuer, right? Or have a company, about some ways that you can learn. One of them is grants, but there's some other things that we have in there as well. So there's a survey question. We're trying to figure out the next ones that we want to do to be able to have a discussion like this, share some stuff like John did, but then if we can find some people who are being innovative in the space, provide you some of that information as well, and maybe get together on a frequent basis, like maybe once a month, and just talk like this informally. So please respond if there's something that you'd love to hear about. Fill it out. There's a spot to even put in other of say, yeah, I'd like to know about it, or just drop us a line and let us know. So thank you all for coming here. I hope you have a great rest of your day.